Hey there, we're the Westlot Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports, with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above, as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skousbo.
We continue our summer previews with the no plays. The Big Ten teams Northwestern does not play this year. We call it our no play 2 electric boogaloo. Last time we talked about Ohio State, Wisconsin, Rutgers, and Maryland. Tonight we're going to be talking about Indiana, Iowa, Michigan State, and Washington. Not necessarily in that order. We've got something else, different order, but those are the teams we got coming on. We'll start off with a look at, really the darlings of the Big Ten last year. Indiana, who,
really anything happened with Indiana last year? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, Curt Cignetti, how about it? And got them into the playoff, which no one saw coming. I mean, I think everyone was excited about the Curt Cignetti experience, but nobody saw 11-2 with a trip to the playoffs, guaranteed. But
the guy He walked to Coach of the Year. There's never
easily
been a more clear-cut Coach of the Year than Curt Cignetti.
Easily. But now they're in this situation. How do you follow that? Like, are they there, or what's the next step for Indiana? That's going to be what's really interesting to see. John, let's talk about their D.
Well, holy crap. Curt Cignetti, Brian Haynes, who is the DC. If you don't know the name, learn the name. I don't know the extent to which we were all aware, or just how much we're all aware, but these guys can coach football and can coach defense. Just in case anyone didn't know, I want to stress something here. I want to stress the absolute crap out of it. Indiana, with the exception of a couple key Tom Allen years, and certainly not for the past couple of years leading into Curt Cignetti's arrival, and not for the entire stretch of all time prior to Tom Allen's arrival, has been good at defense. This is a place that it's just bad defense, particularly under Kevin Wilson when they were really just as bad as anyone's ever been. But the defensive history at Indiana is very, very bad. And then when Cignetti arrived, this team was bringing in a boatload of transfers. The single largest place these guys were transferring in from was James Madison University, because that's where Cignetti and Haynes were coming from. We will get, weeks down the road to the god-awful Purdue Boilermakers. But one of the things we talked about when we previewed Purdue was that they had a ton of incoming transfers coming in from big-time schools. Indiana didn't have transfers coming from big-time schools. What Indiana had was two coaches arriving in Bloomington who were, and are, really without hyperbole, defensive god coaches. That's kind of where we are right now. I don't know how you can heap more plaudits on these guys. They made JMU into easily the best defensive football team outside of the power conferences. And then they arrived at IU. They took a team with little to any on paper existing talent on defense and a bunch of transfers that no one else wanted. And they produced a defense that was, buckle up, second in the Big Ten in scoring defense, second in the Big Ten in total defense. And keep in mind, that's by only 2 yards a game behind Ohio State, which plays with an NFL-grade defense right now. Indiana was first in the Big Ten in run defense. They were third in the Big Ten in pass defense, fifth in the Big Ten in sacks, third in the Big Ten in tackles for loss, fourth in the Big Ten in interceptions. They were good at everything. Indiana had no weaknesses on defense. And this was with a bunch of spare parts. So when you're looking at the Indiana defense in 2025, it's less instructive to look at what they're returning, and they're returning a lot, including 3 first-team All-Big Ten players, one at each level, in Mikhail Kamara, Aiden Fisher, and D'Angelo Pons. But it's more instructive to look at what they're losing from last year. So if you look at all the key guys who are leaving, C.J. West played 1 year of football at Indiana. Prior to that, C.J. West was at Kent State. and he was an honorable mention All Big Ten guy in 2024. Was drafted in the fourth round of the NFL draft. James Carpenter walked on at James Madison, and he also eventually played 1 year of football at Indiana. He was a finalist for the Bullsworth Trophy at DT, even though he's barely 6 feet tall. He was an honorable mention All Big Ten guy in 2024. He's with the Jaguars now. Jalen Walker was an unranked recruit who also went to JMU, also eventually played 1 year of football at Indiana, was also honorable mention All Big Ten, and he's with the Raiders now. So what do you think is more likely? That Kurt Signetti and Bryant Hayes just miraculously stumbled onto this wealth of future NFL diamond in the rough riches that nobody else wanted out of pure luck? Or that Signetti and Haynes are the reason that all of this happened? That's what we're likely staring at here. So now Indiana is obviously going to be a destination school defensively. And how do you think that's going to affect things here? Would you expect Indiana football to get worse defensively now or better defensively now? The reality is in the Big Ten on defense right now. It's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, and the Indiana Hoosiers. There are a few other teams like Nebraska, maybe Minnesota, that are knocking on the door. But that top six is almost like chiseled in stone right now. And that's insane because one of those 6 teams wasn't even on the map a year ago. But that's the new world order. That's what Kurt Signetti and Bryant Haynes have come in with. That's why both of those guys are making an absolute mint right now to coach football at Indiana. They're the hottest coaches in the country right now. And until Haynes, who is, I mean, this guy is white hot ascendant right now, and until he decides to take a head coaching job somewhere else that he's 100% going to be getting sometime soon. This is the new world order. Indiana's defense is just, they're going to be awesome.
I can't help feeling like yes, of course they were good last year. I just can't help feeling like they played Ohio State and not a single other awesome offense. Florida International, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, Nebraska. Nebraska was pretty good. Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue, Notre Dame.
That was the book on them the whole half of the season, though, on both sides of the ball. And obviously, you're going to get to the offense. But that was like, I feel like the flip side is that they skated under public perception for so long because of their schedule when they were just beating the absolute brakes out of every single team that they played. And everyone's like, yeah, but they need to play somebody. And it's like, yeah, they just won like 60-0 though. Like there was a lot of that. So yeah, but I mean, it's like, again, like this is a team that minted so much out of seemingly so little. And they return again, like there's no one else that's returning an all Big Ten first team guy at every single level of the defense. Like, I mean, they're losing guys, but again, this is at least on the defensive side of the ball. Like these guys are in benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. I'm just like these two guys, not just at Indiana, but for really like the past 4 or 5 years, like they haven't been within a mile of a defense that wasn't one of the very best in the nation for like 5 years. It's like they absolutely dominated at JMU, and now they've dominated at Indiana for a year. Like, I mean, this is just, you don't get a better defensive upward trajectory than this.
Yeah, I mean, the track record is there for sure, and I think they're good. And this is going to bleed into my view of the offense. I think, last year was a pretty magical year, and it is going to be quite difficult for them to replicate it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that offense. I mean, like you say, incredible year last year. Curtis Rourke, I mean, talk about a warrior, playing through injury and just playing incredibly. He's gone, but they bring another exciting quarterback in.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw the potential for their offense to bloom last year, given the upgrades to the staff. You mentioned Rourke, who we had previewed at Ohio and knew like this is a legit guy. They've got great running backs. They've got good receivers. Signetti, carries this pedigree and track record. He's coming from JMU, et cetera. I just don't think any of us thought it would happen so quickly. Nor that Signetti would be so like merciless in the way. I mean, 77 points on poor, hapless Western Illinois in week 2. My God. 42 the following week at UCLA, and then 52 against Charlotte. Like, yeah, to your point, John, they were just absolutely housing people. It was reminiscent in a way of Northwestern in 2000. And I think we even talked about that last fall because it was so unexpected. I mean, that frankly, Northwestern scoring 50 points a game was a bit more unexpected than Kurt Signetti doing it. But the fact that he was able to keep it up through, much of the year, that Nebraska game, hammering Nebraska 56-7, I think is what was that? Their week 7 kind of finally put them on the map in the public perception. But they averaged 40 points per game. That is close to,
That's ridiculous.
well, and it's close to double what they averaged the prior 3 seasons. That's a preposterous overnight success. And it wasn't a giant, it wasn't some crazy scheme change. They didn't invent a new kind of offense. They're just like excellent coaches that brought in the right kind of players. Now, Curtis Rourke was the perfect acquisition for Indiana. And I think what you saw from them was when they struggled against Ohio State, they struggled mightily in the second half against Michigan. They struggled mightily in the first half against Notre Dame. And when things broke down, it's because defenses were talented enough in the pass rush to get to Rourke before he could really do damage. Because what he had done earlier in the year is he just carved people apart. Like zone, blitz, man, whatever it is. Their receivers were too good to play man. Their running backs forced you to be conscious and put guys in the box, and it gave Rourke all the tools he needed to diagnose what the defense was and just carve you apart. It's going to be pretty interesting this year to see if they can strike gold again with Fernando Mendoza. So he's coming out of Cal. He was pretty good there. And they brought in some other key transfers to, kind of keep things rolling, and they keep a lot of really strong talent. So their offensive line looks really good. They add Pat Coogan from Notre Dame at center, a guy we were maybe kind of hoping that could potentially matriculate to Northwestern. But they've got 4 other experienced starters and some really good depth. I talked last year about how well coached this unit is and how well regarded their offensive line coach is, and we expected it to be a strength for Indiana last year. Again, it would teams could pass rush them and get to Rourke, but only the best teams could pull that off. And I think this offensive line should be, a step further along this year with the scheme, with the coach, with the continuity, etc. This is going to set them up for success right out of the gate. They bring back their top 2 wide receivers, Elijah Sarrett and Omar Cooper, who were dynamite last year. They both terrorized us. Everyone else that caught a pass is gone, but I don't think that really matters. They've got some good transfers. They've got, they're going to be fine in that department. They're going to be plenty of weapons for Mendoza to throw to. The transfers they're bringing in come from Clemson, Cal, App State, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. John, your point about this becoming a destination for defensive players, it's become a destination for talent across the board, which is, again, we're talking about Bloomington, Indiana, and the Indiana Hoosiers. That's like a bananas sea change overnight.
Such a turnaround. It's really incredible.
It is really wild. Now, there are some key departures. There's superstar tight end Zach Horton, who was an absolute monster in run blocking, and I feel like really gave them incredible leverage to operate their offense and dictate terms against, whatever they saw on the other side. He's gone. And also gone are both their running backs from last year, Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawson. I think these 3 guys will be a big hit to IU's effectiveness on offense. They were absolutely mega last year in keeping IU on schedule. And I just don't think Roman Hemby, who transfers in from Maryland, or their returner Kalen Black are of the same caliber. Curtis Rourke was spectacular on third down last year, and I think Indiana's offense is gonna face some more difficult third downs on average this season, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on Mendoza. for comparison between these two teams, and it's hard because of the other talent, et cetera. So it's not exactly just, about the quarterbacks, play calling, a whole bunch of other things come into play, right? But Indiana was 13th in college football with a 47% conversion rate on third down last year. Cal was ranked in the 70s, down at 38%. Like I said, it's not all on the quarterback, but that level without Rourke and without those running backs and without Horton is going to be damn hard for Indiana to maintain. And I think ultimately they're just going to have a less effective running game, and it's going to take a little bit of air out of the sails on their passing game. Now, there's still, like I said, the O-line is strong. The top two wideouts are there. Mendoza looks like a great, plug-and-play starting quarterback. They're still going to be good on offense. I just can't imagine them, certainly not improving on last year's 41.3 points per game. I think they're going to come back to earth a little bit. Probably still in the mid-30s. Low 30s at worst. That's, way better than Indiana's been for a decade or more. So they're still in good company, and they're still going to be a really tough team. I just think they're going to fall short of last year's explosion on offense. Kind of similar to Northwestern, coming off of some of our best years. It's really hard to maintain and build on that. And it'll be interesting, like how much of last year was the element of surprise and the mentality of no mercy that Cignetti imprinted on this team. And when they don't have the hammer as in quite as strong a position, can those other things still foster? I think so. Cignetti's a phenomenal coach.
That's the thing. I'm like, yeah, Sam can get when Sam gets into the schedule, but I'm like, this is the thing. I feel like that man is a great white shark, and people are still talking about this team like the little engine that could. I feel like, I really hope Indiana can win, and then this guy's out there just chalking bodies. I wouldn't bet against the man.
I like against the Indiana states and the Michigan states and the Wisconsins and the Purdues and the Marylands. 100%.
Let Sam go through the schedule, because there's a lot of those on this schedule.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We'll just run through it real quick. Opening up against Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. Certainly not your murderer's row of a non-conference schedule. They're home for Illinois. They're at Iowa. They get a bye week before they travel to Oregon. They're home for Michigan State and UCLA, so a West Coast team in late October. They're at Maryland, at Penn State, home for Wisconsin, and at Purdue. After a bye week. So you've got 3 out of their last 4 games are on the road. Okay. But
this is a sweet schedule.
Circle September 20th. That is the game that will define to me the contours of the dark horse race in the Big Ten.
Well, that's the thing is, this is why that is 100% true, but both of those teams just might be really good football teams. And the team that loses that game could
again,
that's the Illinois game.
So I just whoever loses that game. I mean, Indiana is not winning at Oregon, at Penn State.
Correct.
They're not winning those 2 games.
True. That's true.
But you can look at the same thing. Indiana can start the season 3-3 and easily win 8 games. They would have to just beat Michigan State, UCLA, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Purdue. Those aren't good football teams.
But they went to the playoff last year.
They did.
Oh, I don't think they're going to win 11 games.
Anything short of 10 wins is going to be seen as a disappointment. And and that's not fair, but that's the way this sport works.
I don't agree. I don't think it's the same thing. I think there are people lining up to say this team's going to go 6-6. I think that seems to be like
you have not been reading the reviews I've been reading.
Well, some people. There are just some people that seem to be low on this team. Where I'm to me, if they lose to, there are three good defenses on their schedule. They can lose those three good defenses and still win 9 games. That's Oregon, Iowa, Penn State. Illinois was not a good defensive football team last year. All the other defenses on their schedule were basically bad. And they're like, and I agree, like they could fall off, but it's like, compare them to a team like a Michigan State or a UCLA, or like a Wisconsin, like Michigan State and Wisconsin. If you add up all of the all Big Ten selections at every single level, including honorable mentions across those two teams, I think Indiana might have more first team all Big Ten defensive guys coming back than those two teams have total selection. Michigan State has like 2 all Big Ten guys across every level of their defense, including honorable mention. Indiana's returning 3 first team all Big Ten defensive players. And that's where I just keep coming back to, like you were saying, you were like, their running backs were great, no doubt. And Rourke is special, no doubt about it. But I'm like, they have like awesome receivers, and they're probably going to have a great offensive line. And this just man-eater of a coach who's never not won at like every level, and there's just not much on their schedule. There's so many teams where I'm like, I compare what they've got to what UCLA's got, Maryland's got. Like they could beat Maryland 50-0. So again, like and I guess maybe I don't know, maybe expectations are different. But I see like 9 here, and I see 8, and I mean I'm like, if they win 11 and then 8 in the follow-up year for Cignetti, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people, maybe you're right. Maybe people will be like they fell off. I'm just like, his chances of winning 20 games over 2 years seem really good to me.
I agree with everything you just said, and I don't think that's a failure for Indiana. But I think I mean, right now both Phil Steele and Adam Rittenberg have Indiana 20th in their preseason ratings. They're not going to be in the top 25 if they're 9-3.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, again,
unless they got one of the big guys, unless they win big game hunting, that's the thing. Kirk Cignetti, the way he is wired is to, yes, he's a shark, but he wants to go big game hunting. He's not interested in going 8-4 or 9-3. He wants,
but maybe that means they won't.
And this is where, well, maybe not. And this is where the playoff era. This is a team that, like we talked about Ohio State on our last podcast, and we talked about like that team can just about like roll out of bed and make the playoff again. And then once you're in, who knows what happens? Indiana is not that team, and it is going to be really interesting what the perception of them is if they end the season 8-4 or 9-3. And again, like, it's a good year. I don't think all of a sudden people are going to be like, "Whoa, Indiana sucks" or anything like that. I think it's going to be seen as a disappointment that they couldn't get back to the promised land.
Maybe. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know, what more he has to do to build positive momentum and everything. I mean, like, this guy, like, he's like the past 3 or 4 years, he's just dominated. And then he comes into Indiana for 1 year. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would land on either 8 or 9, but, it's pretty easy to carve out. I mean, it's not like winning at Iowa is like taking on the world here, or beating Illinois at home. They could start 4-2 and easily get to 8 or 9 wins.
Well, and that's why I think the September 20th game against Illinois is so interesting. Because if they win that, and if they win it convincingly, then I feel pretty good about them winning everything else on their schedule, save Oregon and Penn State. And
I know,
and at Iowa will be hard, but
you could
they
get right. I mean, like an absolutely lit game on national television where an undefeated Kurt Cignetti 5-0 Indiana team's traveling to Oregon for a game they'll likely lose. But I mean, that's on the table, like, and everyone's like, holy crap, this guy just doesn't lose football games, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But I keep looking at the no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Oregon's not infallible, and Penn State's not infallible. Like, like those aren't, if Ohio State was on this, and actually even Ohio State's not infallible. Like there's nobody in the Big Ten that's totally bulletproof. These two squads, Penn State and Oregon, are probably the closest. But if Indiana is cooking at the same level they were last year with the QB change and the change in running personnel, and obviously they haven't lost a ton off of the defense, like that'd be amazing. I just don't think they're going to be cooking at that same level, and I think that will take a lot of wind out of the sails pretty early in the season.
It's just like I just like you look at some of the teams, like when there are so many bad teams on their schedule, and when they played bad teams, like this team played UCLA last year, they played Maryland last year, they played Michigan State last year, they erased those teams. And yeah, like the offense might fall off, but
and they'll do it again, but it's not going to matter because they didn't play Illinois and they didn't play Iowa.
Right. I mean,
and those are two really good, solid teams. And if Indiana falters against them, there's going to be a lot of same old Indiana.
Yeah. I know, and I just keep coming back to this is exactly what Curt Cignetti is telling his team right now. He's like, they don't believe in you. They're just waiting for you guys to fall off again. I told them all to Google me. They didn't Google me.
Yeah.
Now they're saying we're not going to win any football games.
The other thing though is like Illinois. I mean, like when you have a year like Indiana had last year, you ain't sneaking up on anyone this year.
That's
Illinois
true.
Illinois and Iowa have those games circled as well, and that is a place that the Indiana Hoosiers have never been before.
That's for sure.
It'll be interesting.
You're right.
It'll be really interesting to see. Like, you imagine those first three games are just going to tear through. Like, they will tear through Old Dominion.
Indiana. They're going to average 60 points.
But what's going to be interesting is their mindset coming out of that, right? If there's
Brett Bielema, what he's telling his team, like from assuming they have a game on September 13th, like Sunday morning, September 14th, everyone in Illinois is getting a text message that just says like, we're going to punch them in the mouth.
Yeah.
And then we're going to punch them in the mouth again. And then we're going to see what happens. Like that, like Illinois is going to come out swinging because they see themselves as the Indiana of this season. And a lot of other people do too.
Yeah, you're right. It's a huge game considering that it's Illinois against Indiana. You're right, on September 20th.
It's crazy that it's such a huge game.
It's a big time football game for sure.
Which is wild. Like you think in the history of our podcast, that sentence has never been uttered before.
I know.
Illinois,
right?
Indiana, it's a big time matchup. Wow.
Probably never ever been good at the same time.
No,
Never.
I don't think so.
My dream is that they win their first 5, they lose at Oregon, but then they keep winning against these bad teams, and then James Franklin just horks it up to Curt Cignetti at home in Happy Valley. I'm just like, just Curt Cignetti just walks in and eats his lunch. Like that's
oh
the
my
dream.
God.
That'll be Penn State's whiteout game, right?
Yeah, may it happen. Yeah, it could be.
We'll see. We'll get to Penn State a little bit down the road, but for now, let us take a look at the Washington Huskies, team that 6-7 last year, definitely not where they had been in prior years. A lot of changes, a lot of new things, but they had a wide receiver who ate us for lunch, and I'm looking at the roster. It looks like he's back, but
indeed he is.
Yeah. So before we get to the Denzel Boston of it all, John, let's take us through the Husky D.
Well, it's funny from an overall perspective, right? Because this team was 6-7 last year. I think if you were going to, I'm not saying this is going to happen by any stretch of the imagination, but if you were going to take one of those 4 Pac-12 arrivals, right, and you were going to have to pick one and be like, this team is the team that's going to get Nebraska'd, Washington would be your winner. Because UCLA isn't good enough to be in that conversation to begin with. And USC and Oregon are probably too good to be in that conversation. But Washington kind of feels right. Because it's a team with all this tradition, but they're coming in with this coaching uncertainty. They have all this talent turnover. And there's if there's a team that has national titles on their docket, and all this unbelievable history yet could somehow get swallowed up by the new iteration of what the Big Ten is. Washington could potentially be it. And like that's sort of what happened in year one. Again, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen to Washington. Washington's an awesome football team, but they just had this weird kind of like, hey, kind of like this is a good team with a lot of pride that kind of just got ground up in the grist of this conference. On the defensive side of the ball, there are a couple caveats to that. So this was the number 9 defense in the conference in total defense last year. But remember, being 9th in the conference in total defense now makes you a top half defense in the Big Ten, which is really something to wrap your head around now. But that's the conference that we're in right now. And then the second thing is Kalen DeBoer, as we discussed last year, Alabama's current head coach, but who was at Washington, was very much not a defense first guy. And this is historically Washington, an absolute titan defensively in the Pac-12. But they got worse on defense every year under DeBoer. And then under the new regime, Steve Belichick, who was hired as the DC for their first year in the Big Ten, and we talked about him last year. Obviously, Bill Belichick's son. We weren't particularly high on him.
Future North Carolina head coach.
Yeah, exactly. Future North Carolina head coach Steve Belichick. He wasn't inheriting like this massive wealth of riches on defense, but frankly, he overperformed. It could have been worse. We were really impressed by the way he coached against us. It was just obvious from the way he was operating that he had a really good understanding of what Washington's strengths were relative to us. He had a really good understanding of our limits. He understood how to play against us and just had our number defensively, and came out of that game being like, this guy, he knows what he's doing for sure. But in a situation that certainly Ohio State ought to be looking at extremely closely, Washington was sitting on a DC from the Belichick coaching tree who was always going to jump at a chance to either DC in the NFL or coach with his dad. And coaching with his dad arrived first. So Steve Belichick is at North Carolina now, and Washington is dealing with its 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years. But that new defensive coordinator is Ryan Walters.
God damn it.
I know.
Right?
And all of us, I think everyone has to owe it to this guy to see if he just simply got Peter principled at Purdue. When Illinois hired Walters from Missouri back in the day, we all celebrated it. And then he produced this monster of a defense at the school down south. And that was in no way surprising because it was like this was the kind of pedigree he came in with. He might just be born to be a college defensive coordinator.
Counterpoint, Purdue's a wasteland.
Yeah, exactly, right. Or he just got stuck in that horrible situation at Purdue, right? But if he builds a great defense at Washington, which could absolutely happen, he's probably in it for the long haul. It's a really inspired hire. I would have done it. Like, it's an awesome hire. Washington did the right thing. But it remains to be seen what exactly he's got to work with in year one here. So Washington has a ton of guys coming in through the transfer portal from everywhere, from Washington State to Utah to Northern Arizona. It's a solid group of guys. Like, you can look and it's like, this is not Oregon's transfer haul incoming defensively, which is unreal. But it's not bad either. Like, this is a solid, and this is Washington. Like, it's a solid group of guys coming in. It is a ton of defensive turnover on this team, though. And again, that's not Washington's history. And of course, we've talked about this before. This is the new world everyone has to adjust to. But Washington historically has been a team that develops its own talent in-house extremely well. And that's kind of not what they're looking at right now. They have all these transfers coming in. A lot of them are going to play. And Walters is kind of going to have to come in, pick up all these disparate pieces and make it work. What he does have, though, undisputably right away, is a team that covers really well. This is a really good secondary team, but particularly at cornerback. Ephesians Prysock is an awesome corner. He's one of the best corners in the conference. He killed us last year. UW has added Takario Davis opposite him, who's a big-time get from Arizona. In terms of just a pair of cornerbacks, this is as good a pair of cornerbacks as there is in the conference. This team's going to cover like bananas. And if you remember, too, that like their ability to cover against us enabled them to do all kinds of things in terms of what they were doing pressure-wise and getting to us, and their ability to be patient. And keep in mind, too, Walters, go back to his time at Illinois, like developing the secondary is what this guy does. So you look at the pieces that he's got here, they're going to be an awesome team. Granted, they might be built from the back to front a little bit, but that secondary is going to let them do a lot of things. He's going to want to bring a lot of pressure, and the coverage is going to allow him to do that. Beyond that, it's kind of up in the air. Again, by Washington standards, if you look across the defensive line and the linebackers, this is not the kind of team that Washington's had in glory years past. They're a team with a really good secondary and a lot of new pieces and a new defensive coordinator that's going to be figuring some things out. But, I mean, let's be honest. Like, this is probably the marriage of the right guy and the right program. It's going to bear fruit. I think this is probably going to be a really thing. Something's going to work out really well for Washington. I just don't know if it's going to work right off the bat. They may have some issues, especially run defense early on, but they got Ryan Walters. They're going to be able to cover, and that's a good place to start.
They were just super inconsistent last year on both sides of the ball.
They really were.
And I'm sure some of that is, I mean, we talked about like how new they were. Like, I think it was 0 returning offensive starters last season. And
right.
It wasn't much better on the defensive side. And I think that really showed. And now at the same time, they were also the literal poster child for the stupidity of a conference that stretches from New Jersey to Los Angeles, in that they won every single game they played at their home stadium and lost every single game that they played away from their home stadium. So I got to think they're a little bit more consistent this year on both sides of the ball, and that's probably all they need to improve on their record.
So run us through that offense then.
So this is one of those moments where I ring the bell a little bit, because last year I looked across the Washington offensive footprint, their coaching history, their scheme, etc., and I really questioned why everyone was just penciling in the Jed Fish Arizona experience at Washington. And I was right. Arizona in 2023 produced 36.5 points per game, 450 yards per game, and only allowed 2 sacks per game. Washington in 2024, 23 points per game, 390 yards per game, and 4 sacks per game. Granted, they played a really tough schedule, but that is a huge drop. And I think obviously a big part of it was the returning starters, all the transfers in. There was a lot of work to do, but I was pretty concerned. I just didn't think Will Rogers was a very good fit for what Fish wanted to do and what he had done in the past. And he didn't have like bad numbers. He got injured, etc. He was 70% complete, which is probably the most impressive part of what he did last year. But I think they're going to be in better hands this year. So by the end of last season, Desmond Williams was starting. I think he started the last 2 games, and this is his team here in 2025. It's an actual homegrown talent starting at quarterback for a team. He was recruited by Washington. He played behind the starter for a year.
You're allowed to.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
Yes, exactly. So, he's a true dual threat QB, and that's always been a staple of what Fish has done with successful offenses, which is why Will Rogers was a little bit miscast. In the time that he played last year, Williams had 83 rushes carrying the ball and attempted 105 passes. So like that's, you're going to see a 40, 60, 45, 55% split. And this is exactly what Fish and staff want to do. Williams did get sacked like 1 million times against Oregon last year, but you would think as he matures, like his elusiveness would help reduce the sack rate. Washington does return both their tackles from last year's offensive line, so hopefully he can help make them look a little bit better. The interior of the offensive line is all new, but there's some high-caliber players, some good transfers, and again, they had 0 returning starters last season. So I think depth and chemistry are still going to be a little bit of a concern on the offensive line, but they've also got some serious pop in their skill positions, and that starts with number 1 with a bullet, Jonah Coleman. This dude was awesome at Arizona. He was awesome running the ball last year at Washington, and he's going to be awesome this season too. He topped over 1,000 yards last year. He just topped over 1,000 yards last year, I should say. And I think a healthy 2025 could have put him well beyond that mark. He's hard to tackle. He's fast. He was a menace when we played them. They also get gigantic Denzel Boston, who you mentioned earlier. Sam, 6'4", speedy receiver, tore us apart, did that to some other teams too. He wasn't their leading receiver, but 800 yards, 9 TDs. pretty darn good. He is going to be, kind of the face of what's mostly a young receiver core. They did bring in Amari Evans as a transfer from Penn State. This is a school that has typically recruited wide receivers pretty well. They've got a lot of young guys with pretty good talent on paper to come in. So they're going to figure that part out. This is not something that Jed Fish has ever had problems with. So like what that all adds up to is like I think this team on offense can be a lot more consistent. They were pretty explosive last year, so I don't think like their explosiveness is going to get better. But I think they're going to be a lot more consistent, especially on the road. I think they'll produce a bit more on offense. But how much so is going to be intriguing because much like Rutgers is a pretty tough path to demonstrate offensive improvement against this kind of schedule.
Speaking of the schedule, let's run through that one real quick. They open up the season at home against Colorado State and UC Davis. They get a very early bye week before going to the Palouse and playing Washington State in the Apple Cup. They come home for Ohio State. They travel to Maryland, come home to play Rutgers, get back on the road to go to Michigan, home for Illinois.
Jesus Christ.
Bye week where they're going to cash in all their frequent flyer points and go to Hawaii or something. I don't know. They travel to Wisconsin. They're home for Purdue. They go to UCLA, and they finish off the season at home against Oregon.
The last 3 weeks are nice. They get to stay home in November for the most part. But November 8th, Washington has to play at Camp
Wisconsin.
Randall. Oh.
Yeah.
So here's just an example of, so they open with Colorado State. Colorado State won 8 games last year.
Yep.
Colorado State also lost a close game to Oregon State and Fresno State. This is a team that could have won 10 games. I bring this up because Washington only plays 3 non-conference games. One of the other ones is the Apple Cup on the road.
Which they lost last year.
This is not the kind of crap you can do in the new Big Ten. Like, you need the creamy frosting. And if you're going to keep playing the Apple Cup every year, you cannot be messing around.
They need to play the Apple Cup every year. I mean, let's
for sure
be straight.
I love it.
One piece of context. Colorado State has 4 returning offensive starters and 2 on defense. So that game might be a bit creamier and frostier than you would think just off the top.
But Colorado State is about to join the Pac-12 next year.
And also, that's right.
There was much rejoicing.
Yeah, that's right. And also Washington's probably going to be a pretty good football team here. I mean, again, it's like, this is what we were saying where I was like, the whole thing of like being Nebraska. It's like Nebraska didn't roll into the Big Ten with a bad football team. They rolled in with pretty good football teams and they just kind of got mired in the muck. And this is where I'm just looking at Washington being like, I feel like they have a good football team. Like, they got a lot of stuff. They got an absolute monster of a wide receiver. Scuzz painted a picture. They have an awesome running back, right? They have an awesome secondary. They have good coaches. I guess the Fish era remains to be seen, right? But this schedule just kind of sucks. Like, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but...
I mean, the travel, like, they're going back and forth across country a lot.
That middle section is brutal, because it's not just the travel. That's hard. So, Washington State, like, they lost to Washington State last year. That's right. That is a massive rivalry. They have to come off of that and travel to the Horseshoe. They are going to be a...
No, they don't.
Oh, I'm sorry. They host Ohio State.
Yeah, they host Ohio State. Then they go to Maryland. Then they come home for Rutgers. Then they're at Michigan.
Playing Washington State and then Ohio State 2 weeks in a row, they are going to be a bloody pulp after that.
Yeah.
And Maryland's a bit of a get right. Rutgers is tough, but they get them at home, and then they got to go to Michigan and play Illinois. Woof.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, they're to get to 7. They're going to be bruised and battered to get to 7 wins. And that's with a good football team. It's just not that great of a schedule. Like a random game like at UCLA, like those teams go back a million years. Like,
yeah.
I think Washington's a better team, but like UCLA is not scared of them. And that's Washington's going on the road for that a week before they have to play Oregon. So, I mean, again, and it's like, right, like, again, I think this is a good football team. I think this is a winning football team. They won 6 in the regular season last year. I mean, I think they can get to 6 or 7 again this year. But this is what I mean when I'm saying, like, Washington is a this is a team with national championships and still have a boatload of talent on the roster. They played in the friggin' national title game 2 years ago. They're and I just think they're kind of a little bit mired in the muck here right now. Like they need to catch one of these more favorable schedules for them to put up an 8 and a 9 and get going. But I don't know. I think they still could win 8 games, but it's just a tough road.
Winning eight is hard. There's zero margin for error, and I see some margin for error in the way this team is constructed. And then the travel thing is real. Until they prove otherwise, the travel thing is real. Wisconsin on November 8th. I know that the Washington Huskies have played in snow before. But that's an extremely difficult place to play.
To Camp Randall in November. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That stings. So I like it is they can get to 8, but they have to absolutely smash it out of the park to do it. I think 6 or 7 is much more likely.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, this is between 5 and 7. Right? And
yeah, which again is
God, if it's only 1-5, that'd be hard. That'd be tough.
It would, but you don't have to squint very hard to see it.
No,
it's just weird. Again, and it's just weird too, because I'm like, we're going to talk about teams. Like, we're about to talk about a team that I think is worse, worse than this team.
Yeah.
But Washington's just their schedule doesn't do them any favors. And it's just, it's weird because there's a lot of good pieces on this Washington team. Washington's got a lot of stuff that a lot of other teams would like to have.
It's
with a little more frosting, like they could make a lot of noise.
Yeah. Well, and psychologically, they're kind of the opposite of Indiana, right? They're a team that's been competing for the conference crown for years. Every year, they're a perennial, power. And
we talked
that is
about
not
last
the case
year.
anymore.
We talked about last year. You look at the defensive history of the Pac-12. Like, who are the best defensive teams year into year? It's Washington, and then there's not a close second place. That's how good they are as a defensive football team historically. But again, we're all of a certain age. I can go back and tell you how Nebraska was in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. And anything can come to an end.
It's true. If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Real quick, before we get on to Michigan State, I just saw the Northwestern representatives in the Summer League this year. Basketball. You got Brooks playing for Oklahoma City, obviously. Pete Nance is playing for Milwaukee. And Boo is playing for the Nuggets. So that's fun.
Really?
Well, yeah. That is fun.
He had a strong season with the Westchester Knicks, so good to see him. That's probably a notable acquisition for the Nuggets. That's awesome.
And then we got 4 coaches. Jordan Ash is coaching for the Suns. Mike Greenman coaching for the Bulls. Ryan Greer is coaching for OKC, and Sanjay Lumpkin is coaching for the Hawks.
Oh wow, Sanjay! Wow. I didn't know Sanjay was coaching.
I had no idea.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And shouts to friend of the pod, Jordan Ash. Go get it.
Yeah. So now let's talk about Michigan State. Yeah, I mean, they haven't been good in a while, and this is not
been a minute.
It's been a minute. Their second year with Jonathan Smith. First year was, I think better than we thought. I mean, if 5 and 7 is better than you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than we pegged them.
They beat Iowa by 12 points. They scored 30 points on that defense. There's not a soul on this planet that had predicted that before the season started.
That's true.
Right. Now, was that by far and away the crowning moment of their season? Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So, yeah, now in year 2 of the Jonathan Smith era, what are they looking at on defense?
I mean, this is one where, again, we talked it in the first No Plays pod. For anyone who's coming in recently, relative to everyone who's been with us for a long time, and just how we're leveraging the experience of having done these things for 15 years. I mean, we were here when Michigan State was mopping the floor with everyone else defensively. Those peak D'Antonio years when they were just crushing everybody, where you were like, it was just an expectation they were going to have a top 3 defense in the conference year to year, and specifically
when they were maybe getting tips on recruits from Ohio State to keep them away from that other team in the state of Michigan.
Hey, who knows? But I mean, even specifically run defense, where it was like, it was an expectation that Michigan State was going to have probably the best or second best run defense in the conference on a year-to-year basis. And it's just a testament to where we are right now that we look at the fact that this team had the number 10 total defense in the conference in 2024. And like the reaction is, wow, how'd they manage that? Like, how'd they pull off 10th in the conference? And honestly, from my vantage point, I don't know how they pulled off the number 10 total defense in the country. I really don't know.
Conference.
This team did not, and it's funny, like, this is a team that's been 10th or better in the country. That's not where they are right now.
No.
10th in the conference is where they are right now. Right. But in terms of, like, how they had the number 10 total defense in the Big Ten, I don't know how. This isn't a team that tackled. They didn't get sacks. They didn't get tackles for a loss. This was the number 15 team in the conference in scoring defense. They were saddled with a not good offense. I wouldn't say bad, but not good. Scuds will take us through it. This is a team that had 0 first, 0 second, 0 third team, all Big Ten selections on defense. They had 2 honorable mentions, defensive back Jordan Turner and linebacker Charles Brantley. Just for comparison, Northwestern had 1 second team, all Big Ten selection, Theron Johnson, and 4 honorable mentions. So just for a point of reference, Michigan State had 3 less total selections than we did, and no first, no second, no third team selections. And yet somehow they scraped not completely crappy out of the bottom of the pan. And I suppose that kind of reflects the Fish era, or not the Fish era. I suppose that reflects the Jonathan Smith era as a whole in year 1. I am very much on the record as being in no way, shape, or form impressed with Joe Rossi, neither his first year at Michigan State nor his time before that in Minnesota. That's the defensive coordinator. Last year did not do anything to change that for me. And just know now that Brantley has transferred out to Miami and Turner is with Sammy's Broncos now. Those were their 2 good players. So this feels like a team that's kind of on talent life support here. Are there new guys coming in? Sure. Am I going to talk about them? Nope, I'm not. I give them credit for giving up fewer yards last year than I thought they would. But again, this was a team that made really no statistical impacts, had really no good players, was 15th in the conference in scoring defense, lost its 2 best guys. This is probably still a very bad defense until proven otherwise.
Before we started tonight, it's because you mentioned that Aiden Childs is maybe better than everyone's giving him credit for. I would love to hear you expound on that.
I don't know about better than everyone's giving him credit for, but he was pretty decent last season. I mean, for a first-year starter on a team with, a lot of holes, starting from 0. I think I quipped in last year's preview that I think I called them the Michigan State Beavers because, like, a third of the team was coming from Oregon State, along with Jonathan Smith, the head coach. I think, like, in general, my view last year was that Jonathan Smith's an awesome coach. They made a great hire. I expect the conversation around Michigan State to be a lot different in a couple of years' time, and that they really couldn't help but improve last year because they had been so bad the year before, and that probably dovetails with the defense as well. Like, yeah, they got a little bit better. They got to 10th. Comparing against 2023 when the whole team quit in week 4. because of the way their coach got canned and just like I mean the bottom fell out in just a preposterously large way. Um, but the thing about Childs is he's pretty exciting, and he didn't have a year last year where he only performed against bad teams. He put up arguably his best passing performance of the year against Iowa's defense. He threw for 200 yards against Ohio State. He was solid against Indiana and good against Illinois. So, I mean, they also had an extraordinarily difficult schedule last year. So there's just a number of things kind of coming together. Like when you look at the offense last year, they scored an additional field goal per game. They increased their rushing yardage by 25 per game. They increased their passing yardage by 18 per game. And they had that upset win over Iowa. I mean, like, this real measurable, impactful improvement. And I have to think they can build on it because a first-year QB going to a second year, especially a guy who shows flashes and promise, makes a big jump. I mean, look at, guys like Talia made a big jump in year 2. So I think the squad is all about Aiden Childs. I think he's got a great opportunity to break out this next year. He was sacked 35 times last year.
I mean,
and he threw 11 picks.
You're not kidding about Aiden Childs.
This is a dude who is he's elusive. I don't know that I'd call him a dual threat, but like he has to be more pocket aware this year and more comfortable. And some of that is just, he's got a good coach who has done a good job coaching other QBs and other offenses, and I think he's going to grow. That sack rate's going to come down. He threw 11 picks. That's going to come down. He's, he should be able to improve his accuracy, his decision making. So I think it's real possible to see some growth from this offense. Like they lost a couple guys, but there was so much upheaval and turnover coming from. I mean, they only had 5 returning starters last season. They've got 9 now. The offensive line is deeper. They've brought in some key transfers, not from great places. Like make no mistake, this is not going to be a good offense. But they kept Nick Marsh, who's their best wide receiver. They brought in a really nice transfer from Auburn in Onari Kelly. Michigan State has always recruited good running backs and deployed them effectively. And again, I think they can build on it, right? So like 2 years ago, they scored 16 scored 16 points a game. That is insanely low. Last year, they got up to 19. They're going to get up above 20 points per game this year. They're going to be in the low 20s. That's not a good offense, but it's market improvement, and I think Childs will be fun to watch as you watch his growth.
So let's talk about their schedule. They open up the season at home against Western Michigan. Then they get a game against Boston College. NBC and Peacock. I mean, that's a nationally televised game against
That's weird.
BC. Yeah, it is. Then they have Youngstown State. They travel to USC, get a bye week, and then head out to Nebraska. They're home for UCLA, at Indiana, home for Michigan, at Minnesota, get another bye week. They get Penn State at home. They're at Iowa, and they finish off the season against Maryland in Detroit.
This is, I guess, the kind of season I think they're going to have. Like, I feel like they start like 2-3, and one of those, or like 3-2, I guess. And the 3 are like Western Michigan, Youngstown State, and then at USC because Aiden Childs pulls some ridiculous game out. And they're like, I feel like this is a team that, in my book, is going to win like 5 games, maybe 6 games, but put the fear of God into Michigan. And I don't know, like it is funny that like people, the way that people talk about year 4 of Drew Aller ought be folded into the way people talk about year 2 of Aiden Childs. I'm just like, this guy's numbers, like Scuzz is right. Are they great? No. But he had nothing going for him. It's like his defense isn't helping him. His offense isn't really helping him that much. He clearly has a ton of tools. His ceiling is clearly high. Obviously, it was like super trick and treat, but he was a freshman for a not good football team. Like,
Yep.
right. Like, there's got to be an upward trajectory there. I don't think they have a lot around him. And it's like, they have USC, Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, Iowa on their schedule. Like, none of those look good. They beat Iowa last year. But I think they lost to Boston College, I think, in a close game.
Yeah,
I
they
think.
lost. They lost by 4 on the road to BC.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, like, this is not, like I was saying, like, their defense doesn't have much in the way of talent. It wasn't horrific, it was just kind of bad. It's not the worst schedule in the world for a team that's, 6 wins is a step in the right direction for them, for sure. If they bowl, they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it is interesting though. Like when you compared the defense last year to the prior 1, 2, 3, 4 years, last year's defense is like stunningly better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the weird thing. Is their
100
total defense.
fewer 100 fewer yards allowed per game than in 22 and 21.
That takes me back to what I was saying, where I was like, I don't know how they did it, because you're right. Like, they were like, you dig into the stats. I don't know. And that's the thing. Like, they're not. This is a not. It's really funny to be talking about this team right after we talked about a Washington team that has infinitely more top to bottom talent and could end up in a roughly similar place record wise. It's just strange, but their schedule is not horrible. If they can get that Boston College win, start 3-0. They get UCLA at home. They get Maryland at home.
So it's funny, John, that you
at
bring
Indiana, they're at USC, they're at Nebraska, they're home for Michigan, they're home for Penn State, they're at Iowa.
I mean, all those games that you just listed, they could easily get smoked in the majority of those games, and then play Michigan tough because they always play Michigan.
Yeah,
tough.
that's true.
But like last year, they had to go through a gauntlet, much like
Yeah.
who were we talking about? It much like Washington. They had the 6-game gauntlet in the middle of their schedule last year: Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois. Woof. They don't have anything of that magnitude this year. Yes, they've got 5 or 6 tough teams. I mean, I think winning more than 5 games will be pretty hard for them to do. But it's really interesting you bring up Washington, John. They don't play Washington.
Right.
But if they did, I think whichever team is at home wins that game going away.
It's interesting. I mean, I step back. In 5 games in a row, they play Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa. From a defensive perspective, that's nightmarish.
They do get a bye in there though, so
Yeah, those are 5 great national defenses in a row. And again, it's not like he is loaded with support here. But again, like, they're not trying to win 8 here. Like, if they can get to 6, that Boston College game, they get that at home. That's big for them.
But again, like last year, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois in a row. Those are 6 really good defenses, right? He threw for 199 against Ohio State, 191 at Oregon, 256 against Iowa, 189 at Michigan, 229 against Indiana, 256 at Illinois. For a freshman QB, that's pretty flipping good. Now he got sacked like 4 times a game, so like that, but like, you just got to improve that, and your team's on the field for. I mean, you just extended your drives by 1 to 2 series.
There's a lot of teams starting a lot worse quarterbacks than him.
For sure.
And again, like, we'll see. But yeah, if you tell me right now, you're looking at a substantial sophomore leap from Aiden Childs, then I'll be like, this team's going to be kind of fun. Like, they're not great at anything, but they play a lot of teams that they could beat or play good games with. And that's what I mean about that. I joked, but not necessarily a joke. Like, USC is a team that had a bad defense last year, and if suddenly he just goes out there and he's like, I'm going into God mode this game and I'm just going to trade points with this team, then who knows?
That'd be so awesome.
Yeah,
right.
That'd be so awesome. It's worth mentioning too. Like, I maybe I undersold it, but like, he's got a solid set of weapons to throw to. So, like again, if they did not start the year with much last year, they can get a little bit better protection, and he can just build his pocket awareness and his processing of the game, which like to get sacked 7 times against Indiana and still go 20 of 32 for 229 yards. I mean, yeah, losing effort, you got smoked. But that's what did you say they were, John? Like the second best defense in the conference?
Indiana, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's like that's the thing. Like that's one of like top three in the nation, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, he's. I mean, and here's the other thing too. You mentioned Indiana. We just had this long discussion about the weight of expectations and what Indiana is going to be able to do in the face of all that.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
talked about Ohio State as whatever the polar opposite of that is. That's what Michigan State is. No one outside of East Lansing expects
Zero.
or cares what this team is going to do. They
May-
are working in the shadows completely.
Maybe even in East Lansing.
Yeah,
They're
I
just
mean,
like, hey, it's all gravy.
right, exactly. Like this team has got an exciting young quarterback, a manageable schedule, and no expectations whatsoever. Like, maybe they can put something together.
Finally, tonight, let us talk about Iowa, a team that has been coached by Kirk Ferentz going into his 27th year. Again, to date myself like last time, Kirk Ferentz became the head coach of Iowa when I was still an undergrad. That's wild.
Scuzz and I have stood on the field at Kinnick Stadium in a game where Kirk Ferentz was the head coach.
Oh man. That's wild when you say that.
I know,
Right?
I stress that I'm referring to the year 2000. So it's been a while.
But
yeah.
I mean, this isn't. I could probably just put our Iowa previews on rerun because it's like seems to be the same thing over and over and over. Solid defense, good offense ish.
Good offense.
Well, up or down. More down than up lately, but they were definitely better last year. But we'll get to the offense in a second. John, let's talk Iowa D.
Wait, before we do,
Yeah.
just on that Ferentz point, do you guys know when the last time Iowa had a losing record?
Oh, geez.
Gosh.
No.
When was it?
2012.
Wow.
And the year 2012 notable because that's also the last time we didn't play Iowa.
And before that, they had won 6-6 year, but before that, the last time they actually had a losing record, the year 2000.
Oh man.
Oh,
Kirk
really?
Ferentz has only had 3 losing seasons in his entire tenure at Iowa, which I would not have guessed that in a million
No.
flipping years because
And that
they've been so
crappy-
inept so often. But whoa,
I know.
mean, even when their offense was inept, their defense was carrying them.
yeah. Well,
That
and
crappy-
not just carrying them, but their defense was elite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that made me think that 2000. I'm like, we hit it twice, but now I'm like, that crappy 2000 Iowa
Oh,
team
God
kept
damn it.
Northwestern out of the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
I hate to go there. Hey, good news though, because from my perspective, having to preview this friggin' defense every year, we don't play it.
I know. It's kind of nice.
Super. Yeah.
I don't think,
so that-
guys. I don't think I could handle it if Mark Gronowski smoked us this year. I don't think I could. I don't think I
Yeah.
could mentally stomach that.
Yeah, that would be rough. But anyway, hey, not on our schedule. So if, we talked about how many years Ferentz has been there. Phil Parker's been there 13 years now. And you know that if you've been following those 13 years, whatever the valleys are, that's relative because the peaks are as high as it gets. And it would sum up the 2024 season because Iowa, for them, was a mediocre defense. But Iowa's mediocrity is kind of like a level that all but 3 or 4 other teams in the Big Ten would grab probably in a second. So Iowa was 8th in the conference in scoring defense last year. But the only teams above them were either teams that we expected to have great defenses, all the big names, or two teams, Minnesota and Indiana, who just blew the doors off everyone's expectations defensively. So Iowa was still fifth in the conference in scoring defense. They were third in the Big Ten in interceptions, top half of the conference, sacks, tackles for loss. But the caveat here, of course, is that going into that season, Iowa was coming off a 3-year stretch that is arguably as good as any college football team has ever played defense ever in 100 years. They were so friggin' good that Iowa won a boatload of games solely due to the defense, with a big helping of special teams, with zero help from the offensive side of the football. So the question now is, if and when can Iowa get back to that just unreal standard again, or if they're just going to be good or very good or extremely good going forward. In the short term, though, it might actually be a little bit more fascinating than that, because this is as big a rebuild as Parker's been looking at in a little while. So at linebacker, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, who were titanic football players, those guys combined for 896 career tackles. They are in the NFL now. And those of us who've been following Iowa football for a long time, going back to the theme of like the length of time we've been doing this, the notion that Iowa always has great linebackers is a faulty one. That's not Iowa historically. It goes up and down for them at that position. What they always have is a really deep defensive line. The linebacker core has peaks and valleys. Iowa had been in a pretty lean period at that position in the post-Josie Jewell era, and then they got it back big time. But they might be looking at another lean period now, like we're going to see. But speaking of the defensive line, this is the thing. Every single year at Iowa, this is the bedrock of this football team. It is their bread and butter. It limits how far any Iowa defensive team can fall defensively. So they're not quite where they were maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but that was as good as any team's ever been. Yaya Black is off this team now. He's off to the NFL. But this team still starts Aaron Graves and Ethan Hurkett. These are two of the best defensive linemen in the Big Ten. They're awesome. They're on the field for most downs. They're just excellent. These are really good football players. But again, the key here is depth. I was just stacked with dudes behind these guys who are going to come in. They're going to deliver quality reps. They're just a great defensive line football team. They're built front to back. Heart of the conference. Like it's their strength. They're always good here. Helping to further mitigate that linebacker turnover. And again, it doesn't look like they are in no way replacing the production that they've had the past couple of years at linebacker with what's going to be on this team. But behind them, they still have Xavier Nkwampa at safety, and he's awesome. He's a former 5-star recruit. He's an awesome hitter, awesome athlete. They're going to probably lean on him a lot more this year because of the linebacker turnover. But understand, too, that when you're like, this team has a unbelievable safety who's one of the Big Ten's best and a really good defensive line. And then across the rest of the team where they just return a lot of personnel overall, they were third in the Big Ten in interceptions, but 7 defensive backs had at least 1 interception last year. And most of those guys are back. That's just really good coaching, which is what Iowa has. It's really good scheme. This is just Iowa. Like last year wasn't good for them. It was really good for most other teams. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Because like I said, like their defensive line isn't stacked like the way it's been. Their linebacker core is going to be an issue. They're not loaded with big-time cornerbacks. Like they don't have a Cooper DeJean or a Riley Moss back there right now. But they still have an awesome safety, awesome D-line. And really, really good coaching. So again, like we'll see. We'll see where they are right now. I would say they're probably going to be very good, one of the better defenses in the conference. I don't think that they're going to be the best. I will say, if this defense had to support a Brian Ferentz coached offense, Iowa would be in trouble. Like that would not be a good combination for them, but they don't. They're supporting year 2 of the Tim Lester experience, and Scuzz can tell you how that's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, so on the offensive side, I mean, you mentioned him earlier, but Mark Gronowski, guy we've talked about quite a bit over the past 12 months or so. What was Zach Lujan coming to Northwestern and all, but Gronowski goes from South Dakota State to Iowa. How's he going to fit
Yeah.
in the Tim Lester offense?
So this watching this offense this year is either going to really sting or will kind of explain a heck of a lot about the 2023 Northwestern Wildcats. Maybe both. I don't know. And yeah, it's because of Mark Gronowski, the award winning, championship winning, super FCS quarterback, our offensive coordinator's master project at South Dakota State, picked the Hawkeyes for his grad transfer year to elevate his NFL draft stock. I don't think I'm going to enjoy watching this because on paper he should be pretty good. At the same time, on paper, Cade McNamara was supposed to be pretty good, and he was the opposite of that at Iowa. It's funny, a minute ago we were talking about Michigan State, how they only scored 16 points per game back in 2023. Well, they went 4-8 that year. Iowa scored 15.4 points per game that season. And this was the whole Brian Ferentz minimum scores, et cetera, that captivated many of us college football fans. And they went 10-4 that year. So
It doesn't get any less ridiculous with time.
no, it really doesn't get any less ridiculous. And this is another situation where I was wrong. I was pretty skeptical about Tim Lester. He had very little experience as an OC. Most of it being at Western Michigan with a really good offensive-minded coach. I didn't know. I felt like McNamara was going to be a real problem last year for Iowa and was not going to be able to do a lot. I didn't really know what was going to happen, and they really turned it around. They scored 27.7 points per game. They almost doubled their production. So much of that was Caleb Johnson at running back. And that is the big question to me. It is less about Gronowski this year and more about can they operate in a world without Caleb Johnson. Their running production last season increased from 116 yards per game to 197. And yes, I talked a lot in last year's preview about the O-line. They looked like an Iowa O-line again. Brian Ferentz and his weirdly underweight O-lines were no longer around, and they performed well. But Caleb Johnson was also impossible to tackle. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry last year. Wow. Roughly 2/3 of that was yards after contact. That basically tells me he was Superman and the offensive line wasn't nearly as good as it seemed on paper. And Caleb Johnson is gone. He is in the NFL now. And I don't know, Kamari Moulton might be awesome. And they typically just mint decent running backs here, but Caleb Johnson was different. I don't feel like we've seen anybody quite like him at Iowa.
Certainly been a minute
in a while. Yeah. It's not since before the angry Iowa running back hating God was around. But so there is some intrigue with this offense now because most of the offensive line is back. They look good on paper. They have a handful of 200-pound running backs that are going to be solid. This is what Kirk Ferentz does. I think Jazian Patterson has the most breakout potential, but I just don't think there's any way this group matches Johnson's production from last year. Now at the same time, they had Brendan Sullivan at quarterback for a lot of last season, Cade McNamara at quarterback for the majority of last season. Jackson Stratton played a little bit too, which wasn't great. None of those guys looked great, and I have to think that Gronowski is going to be able to outperform any of them. Jacob Gill is back as their number one receiver, former Northwestern guy. He's likely to be the top guy again. There are some solid tight ends to replace Luke Lachey, but there's not much else to write home about. They don't really have any notable transfers. So it pretty much all comes down to Gronowski. He had a down year last year at South Dakota State. And some of that is he surely was injured I mean, it was a solid year, but he had big drops in completion percentage, yards per attempt. His TD to pick ratio went down. His rushing average went down a lot. He got shoulder surgery in the offseason, so he missed spring ball in Iowa City. And I think, like, if I'm playing the numbers game, even with Gronowski, Iowa had their highest points per game, their best turnover margin, their lowest sack rate, and their best rushing offense since 2020 last season. Unless Gronowski is like at the peak of his powers, I just can't believe that they're going to be able to put up that kind of offensive production, and they're going to come back to earth a little bit. Not 15 points per game back to earth that their defense can't step up and help them with. I think they're still going to be a really good team, but I just don't think we're going to get quite the level of offensive production that Caleb Johnson was able to generate last season. If they do, if somehow Gronowski looks like his junior year at South Dakota State when they won the national championship, or not the national, but he won the FCS Heisman, etc. Like, that would really hurt. That would really, really hurt from the what if he came with Zach Lujan in 2024 like we all thought he would point of view. So, this is a team that's gonna cause me to drink in one way or another this year, celebratorily or to drown my sorrows.
Well, let's run through their schedule. It's interesting. They start off the season with a game against Albany. They go to Iowa State for El Asico. They're home for UMass, so that's 2 out of 3 pretty cupcakey non-cons, and obviously the Iowa State game. It's wild every year. Goes back and forth. Get into conference play. They travel to Rutgers. They're home for Indiana. Then they get a bye week before they go to Wisconsin. They're home for Penn State and Minnesota. They get another bye week before Oregon comes to town. So they get Oregon at home on November 8th. Circle that. They travel to USC. They're home for Michigan State, and they finish off the season at Nebraska on Black Friday.
This is what's hilarious to me. If you ask me, like, what's the floor here? 4-8. And Iowa never hits the floor or comes close to it, ever. It's like, that's the thing. I'm like, I look here and I'm like, it's not hard to find the 8 losses. Lose El Asico, lose to Indiana, lose at Wisconsin. We don't think Wisconsin's a great football team, but Wisconsin would get them at home. Penn State, Minnesota, Oregon, USC, at Nebraska. Like, but they won't. That's not going to happen. It's just like, but it's just funny because, like, Scuzz mapped it out. Like, they don't lose. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to be looking at probably 7 wins, 8 wins here and trying to figure out how Iowa put that together. But that just seems to be what they always do. I mean, again, like, part of me, let's say that the Gronowski thing somehow doesn't go sideways for them and they just, like, right, like Scuzz pointed out, like, it's not like they're loaded with talent at wide receiver and tight end. They lost by far their best player at running back. Their defense is good, not great. And if their FCS transfer quarterback isn't what, they and at one point we hoped he would be, then they're like a mediocre to bad offense and a good but not great defense. But that just never seems to be the way it breaks with Iowa. They seem to always find a way to pull this out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it earlier. 3 losing seasons in 27 years.
Right.
It still is just mind-blowing.
They also got Hank Brown, a transfer from Auburn. Didn't play much last year for the Auburn Tigers, so they have a little bit of depth behind Gronowski. I think, like, this, I'm cherry picking this for effect, but it's kind of fun to think about. So so Iowa beat Wisconsin 42-10 last year. And if you're taking notes on our previews, you would have noted that Wisconsin was one of the worst run defenses in the conference last year, and Iowa had Caleb Johnson, who was impossible to tackle. So of course they beat Wisconsin 42-10 last year. If they were to beat Wisconsin again this year, and let's say that's kind of like a pivotal game in getting Iowa to 7 wins and pushing Wisconsin down to 7 losses. That would mean that Luke Fickell in 3 seasons would have matched Kirk Ferentz's number of losing seasons in 27 years.
Oh man, that's a killer stat. That's incredible. It is. That's why I guess Ferentz is going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, and then the flip side. I mean, they could lose to Indiana and easily start 5-1 here. I mean, they just have to win El Assico and beat Rutgers and Wisconsin. Those are not good football teams, and then be hosting Penn State.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, again, it's like I feel like
prior excellent, well-regarded, highly rated Penn State teams have gone to Iowa and lost.
True
for
story.
sure. And again, I'm like it's so hard to talk about Iowa without talking about like all the extremes that have led up to this, right? And it's like, for me, like from my perspective, this Iowa defense is good, but again, it's hard to like see them through the glare of the fact that this team started NFL defenses for like 3 years in a row that were, it was the best defense in the country 3 straight years, and the stats either supported that or it was like, look, they're like third, but they don't have an offense on this team. Like they're coming off of that high, and it's like this defense is just good. Like it is, they've got some great players on this team, and it's maybe a touch uneven, but they're really well coached, and it's like that always seems to carry the day for Iowa. But on the other hand, I'm like, you could also look at it as like it's not a murderer's row defense, and they might not have much of an offense. And it's like, but again, keep coming back to like they don't lose games here. So I don't know, 7, 8, but I don't know exactly how they're going to get there, but I think they are going to get there.
7 feels right unless you get a absolute monster season from Gronowski, and I feel like Max Brosmer at Minnesota is kind of an interesting comp because Max was similarly like an absolutely like elite incandescent performer at FCS and did well at Minnesota. He had a good year at Minnesota, but it wasn't incredible. It wasn't earth shattering. And I wonder if Gronowski's on tap for something similar, in large part because Iowa doesn't have. And again, maybe they've got a stable of untackleable running backs like Caleb Johnson, and they'll be just fine. But nobody else held a candle to him last season, and I think they're gonna suffer some reversion to the mean as a result, no matter who's playing QB.
Yeah, I mean, what do we always say about Iowa? When we think they're going to be good, they're mediocre. When we think they're going to be mediocre, they're good.
Oh God,
this
they're going to the Big Ten championship.
They're going undefeated, right?
This is 100% not. I mean, how many years have we been like, I don't know what Iowa's record's going to be? I feel like we've said that a couple times and be like, I don't know. They could win 5, they could win 11. I don't know.
It's taken us 15 years, or taken me 15 years to look at Kirk Ferentz's, career record and realize, because we have this conversation every year, and obviously some of it is wishful thinking, because as Northwestern fans, we really can't stand Iowa. And I mean, the number of years, John, that you've mapped out, like here, like this schedule could go sideways if this happens and that happens, then oh my God, they have to play Michigan at home, and the bottom could drop out, yada yada yada. And you said it earlier, it never happens. That never happens to Iowa, and it's a testament to their resilience and their program.
Yeah, when we talk about that preseason, then we find ourselves having to talk to our kids about an undefeated Iowa.
Yeah, but it just kind of goes under the radar. You just don't expect them to have had that kind of consistency and longevity, especially given all the attention around the ineptness of the offense. And Ferentz has been around forever, and he's old in the tooth, and oh my God, his buyout is bananas, and yada yada yada. But here they are again and again. They're like a cockroach; they just won't die.
Yeah, I will say it. I guess ending on a positive note, for the first time in 13 years, you as a Northwestern fan don't have to care about how Iowa does.
Cheers, boys.
Amen to that.
It's not our problem.
We don't play them, and we're not. There's not a division title we're vying for either.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, that does wrap up the 8 teams in the Big Ten. Northwestern does not play this year. Quite a variety, and I can't wait to get into the schedule, starting with our game at Tulane next time. It's going to be fascinating.
Brendan Sullivan, you say?
Oh,
I was.
God damn it!
We haven't even started recording there yet. I'm not ready to wrap my head around that. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. But I think on that note, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, all our social media at Westlaw Pirates. And you can always email us, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West Tech lot of Martin Stadium, right across from Tech, flying the red pirate flag because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Skazba, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.